Welcome to the Life Is podcast, where creativity, culture, mindset, and intentional living come together through real conversation. I'm your host, Coy Brown. Each week, I sit down with entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, travelers, and visionaries who didn't stumble into a life they love, they built it. We go deep into how they think, how they reconstructed themselves, and what became possible on the other side. This is not just about what people have accomplished. It's about the internal work that made it sustainable. Because when you build from the inside out, life expands. Let's get into it. This week, I'm sitting down with someone who looked at the life she had built, the careers, the loans, the mortgage, the plan, and made a different decision. Anna and her family paid off $160,000 in student loans, sold their home, left their healthcare careers, and took their kids on the road. Not for a vacation, not for a sabbatical, as a life. They have navigated police bribes in Mexico, homeschooled a 6-year-old across multiple continents, lived like locals in India, Malaysia, Singapore, and Ecuador, and are now planning the Silk Road. What Anna figured out is that life society hands you is a script, and you're allowed to write your own. Here's what it actually took to do that. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Life Is podcast, hosted by myself, Coy Brown. And today we have another guest, phenomenal person who her and her family travel the world. We have Anna here on the show. And just kind of give an introduction, Anna. You're a slow traveler, right? Former healthcare professional.
Yes.
Other titles, I would say, homeschool mom, kind of family freedom architect, and kind of world citizen, if you will. But no, I'm glad you're on the show. I'm super excited because I think a lot of people are going to find a lot of value behind what you do because it is quote unquote different in today's age. And I think a lot of people dream of doing it full time, but they don't know how and where to go and what to do. And you and your husband have it dialed in. So I'm excited to get into the podcast today and learn about what you're doing. So with that being said, if you can, for everyone who's listening, right, Anna, for anyone who's just meeting you, can you kind of tell the listeners, who you are, what your family's life looks like right now, and, what kind of brought you up to the point that we're at now?
Yeah. So like Coy said, I'm Anna. I originally worked as a physician assistant for 10 years. I went into that because I was looking for a lot of job stability coming out of college. And I was like, that's
Right.
the route to go. Somebody will always need somebody in medicine. And being that
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wanted kids and a family, I knew that was a better route to go
Yep.
for myself at that point, right? So did that for 10 years. I ended up in trauma critical care. I switched over to emergency medicine. We ended up facing some unexpected infertility during our journey to have kids. We have our
Mm-hmm.
2 girls now, and then COVID hit. I feel like medicine kind of changed and had like a long ripple effect to it, kind of exposing some of the
Great.
defects to it that we noticed. And they just
Yep.
kind of got exposed bigger at that point, right? It kind of took more away from our time at home. We were working more hours, it felt like. Some staff was being reduced. All that stuff was going on. So during that
Yeah.
time, my husband and I really got serious about our financials. He started doing like a big financial journey himself, getting serious about personal finance. And that's when we like looked into FIRE or the Coast Fi, which is what we ended up doing,
Yep.
and really focusing on traveling full time, which is bumping up our timeline because we really wanted to do it when our kids were 7 and 10, not really 2 and 4. But
Yes.
suffice to say, we ended up traveling a lot earlier. We took a gap year from September of 2024 to September of 2025. And then we realized this is perfect. We love this. It
Mm-hmm.
completely changed our lifestyle, our way of thinking. And we just finished 3 months in Ecuador. So that's where we're at right now.
Okay. So it's a compressed story, but we're going to unpack it. So I
Okay.
appreciate the compressed story. I think it's good for the listeners. We're going to kind of hear more about how you got to where you're at, which leads me really to our next segment here, Anna, which is really the life before, right? I think this is really entailing to kind of hear about this part of like what you guys left and why you left it, right?
Yeah.
The careers, the debt, the house plan, all of that, right? So when we talk about that part, right, before the travel, before really your decision to even jump into this world, if you can kind of paint me a picture, really paint us a picture of what your life looked like. What were your careers, which you kind of briefly touched on, kind of
Mhm.
your day to day and the plan, and then what was that like internal experience of that life? You want to dive a little bit?
Yes. So we were living in Arizona.
Yep.
And like I said, we had worked as physician assistants. I worked in trauma critical care. It was like a level 1 by the state of Arizona. So it was
Okay.
a lot of critical patients. I really enjoyed it. It really taught me so much about medicine and just the teamwork aspect of it. And my husband really got into emergency medicine, which he enjoyed. And I was working 12-hour days, and that was just straight hours of work. That didn't include the time before, after. It was day and night shift. The lucky
Yes.
guy, my husband got mostly day shift. I don't know how he did that in medicine, but he got day shift. His was 10 hours, and that was again just working time.
Yeah.
So we had to leave our kids during that time. They were under 2 at the time. Yeah, they were pretty young. So my family was really involved in terms of taking care of our girls while we were working.
Yep.
But
That's
it
huge.
took so much of our energy to really work these long hours, and I, at the time, felt like this is it. This is what I wanna do. This is everything.
Yeah.
But then you just realize how much time is being taken away from yourself and then your
Mhm.
kids too.
Yeah, that's the difficult part. I think, we talked obviously earlier, I think just our environment now in the world, it's like you work, right? You go to school to get the job, right? To get a degree
Yeah.
to get the job, and then you have this quote unquote plan, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, and if you have kids, it's even worse because yeah, you're kind of taken away from those monumental moments, those experiences, those memories. And then as parents, right, you feel guilty, but you're trying to provide at the same time,
Yeah.
at that same aspect. So yeah, I totally understand there. And like I said, I appreciate kind of painting the picture there of like where life was at that moment and what kind of led to it. Well, you talked about too. You and your husband paid off 160,000 in student loans before making the move, which is, I'm sure someone who's listening is like, where the hell do you get 160,000 to pay that off, or how do you even do it, right?
Yeah.
Especially in this economy. But obviously, that wasn't an impulsive decision. You talked about your husband creating this personal finance plan and
Yeah.
really kind of dialing it in, right?
Yeah.
But of course, it was more of a deliberate runway. When did the idea of a different kind of life kind of appear, and like how long did you sit with it before it came like a reality?
The different life kinda came up when 2020 happened because everything
Yeah,
shifted at that point. And we weren't really cutting down on hours, but work definitely
yeah,
looked different for a while for us in terms of maybe the hours we were working. Like maybe we had more downtime. So Steven, my husband, really got into the personal finance, reading books, and he's like,
yep,
hey, let's do this. This makes sense. By that point, we had paid off all of our loans, and they were all student loans,
yes,
just from our graduate degrees and everything. So then the next thing was, what do we do with this money? We're upgrading
right,
our lives. Do we want to keep upgrading our lives? That's what everyone around you is doing in a
yep,
certain way,
yep,
shape, or form. So it was kind of like pivoting and saying, no, instead, we need to actually be setting ourselves up for retirement way ahead of time, which is our goal.
mhm, yeah, yeah, and speaking of retirement, I feel like we kinda wait toward the end, but I love to hear people like yourself, you and Steven, and others, like, they wanna do it early because I feel like we do kinda we put it off, right? We put it off and don't wanna think about it, and to your point, right, we wanna keep up with the Joneses, right?
Yes.
Especially if you're a high net worth individual or high income, family, it's like, well, we might as well just keep doing what we're supposed to do, right, quote, unquote.
Yeah.
So I could definitely relate there. When you're talking about too leaving your healthcare career with your licenses, right? A
Mhm.
home, a community involvement, especially with young kids. It wasn't just, like a logical, change. Really, as we talked about, it's really identity change. Like it's something you guys
Yeah.
had to change and accept. What did you have to grieve potentially or release to actually make that move? Like what was the hardest thing of letting go of in that moment?
It's funny you mentioned that because it's such a big deal to a lot of people who are, quote unquote, like high earners. You do
Mhm.
high earning things because you say, I'm a lawyer, I'm a
Yeah,
doctor. You identify as that. When somebody asks, who are you? What do you do? You're like, this is who I am. So at this
correct.
point, like, I have to give that up. And honestly, when we started traveling, nobody cared what our job was. It wasn't, what do you do? It's
Yeah,
more of, where are you from? What are you
yep.
interested in? So it really made like a big shift of being like, it doesn't matter what my job is, title. It matters who
Mhm.
I am to my family, to my friends, to my kids. And my kids don't look at me and say, "Mom's a physician assistant." No, they say I'm mom.
Correct. Yeah, your mom. They don't care about the titles
No,
at all. So that's yeah, it's interesting. I think when you guys are well adept in traveling abroad, which we'll talk about more, but yeah, most people don't care about your title. It's like you said, who you are as a person, what do you enjoy, what do you like to do, right?
yeah,
And you as the person more than just these I guess kind of pompous titles, if you will. Speaking of society, right? Because we kind of talked about that, right? Society has a very specific story about what responsible adults, specifically parents, myself included, are supposed to do, right? And we talked about career and your mortgage and stability routine, like you're supposed to have all these things figured out, right? You looked at that story and rewrote it. What kind of gave you that permission to do that? That makes sense.
I think the biggest thing was just looking at our lives and saying, do we really want to keep writing the same script that we were handed? Who handed
Mhm.
us this script? What makes it right? And why do I have to follow it? And who is following it for that sake, right? I feel like a
Yes.
lot of the middle class is following it, and those who aren't are rewriting their life in a way that makes sense for them and their family, and they're
Yes.
happy with that. So we just decided it had to be something different.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, and even too, like when you make that decision, I feel like there's a lot of pushback that you talked about, right?
Yeah.
Pushback, there's judgment, like, who are you to do this different plan, right? Like, you're
Mhm.
doing something different. It's not the norm, right? You're not dancing to the
Absolutely.
same music, um, and being fed this story, if you will, like you said, to just do the same and then retire and pass away. So, there's a lot of courage, I think, and I commend people like yourself, even Steven, truly, because you decide on what you want to do. You didn't want to do what everyone else is doing, and you're going to find your own path, and you're going to be okay with it, right? There's a level of acceptance that you're okay with what you're doing. So
Yeah.
very, very awesome. Look, if you're listening to Anna's story right now and your jaw is already on the floor, do yourself a favor. Open your podcast app right now and look at the show notes. I've dropped a direct link in there where you can grab Anna's 6 free lessons breaking down exactly how she engineered this ship to leave medicine and travel full time on $3,000 a month. Click the link, grab the lessons, and let's get back to the episode. So I want to talk about, really, because as we switch gears here, really the decision and the architecture behind what you're doing, right? So I know people are probably thinking, okay, well, sounds great, Anna. You and Steven did this. How did you actually do it, right? I think that's how we all are wired. We want to know what you actually did to get there. So if you can walk me through, how this was actually built, right? The financial strategy, the timeline, the logistics of selling your house and maintaining your licenses. Because most people think this kind of life requires either wealth or just complete recklessness throughout the process. Well, you guys did it deliberately, right? Planning. What did that process actually look like for you guys?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing was we looked at our finances and said we felt like we had to save 100,000. Don't ask me why. I have no idea why. That just felt like what we were
Good.
spending in the United States. So maybe that's what we would spend abroad because
Yeah.
there was nothing to really go off of. There's not like, here's family who travel long term. Here's what it looks like. Because I feel like a lot of families either relocate or
Hmm.
are that I see are sponsored brands of family that are
Correct.
being given money for this travel and they end up certain locations. And I was like, well, where does that put us in the middle of traveling long term without being sponsored at this point?
Yep.
So we just picked a random number and we went with it. And there was a whole lot of trial and error. And there's a whole lot of people in our families and people that we knew in our circle being like, what are you doing? Like, just
Yeah. Yeah.
to them didn't make sense. Nobody understands it. They don't get it. And that kind of weighs heavy on you too when you're traveling.
Yes.
Like, well, if I messed up, then everyone was right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
admit that they were right, but we should figure this out. So there's a whole lot of trial of error along the way until we finally got a system that made sense.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Was there? I'm just once curious too. Like, were you looking at like, um, I don't know, like healthcare, flights? I guess were you minimizing cost? Because like as I'm thinking, like you're probably reducing costs in certain areas. And how long was that timeline as well doing so
In
before
terms
you
of
got?
like getting to minimizing our costs once we started or beforehand.
Yeah, I would say probably beforehand. One, I guess maybe two questions. Just curious. One, what did you minimize in cost if there were things you were cutting out? And then two, what was the timeline before you ramped up and say, hey, like we're leaving?
Yeah, so I think before we left, we didn't do the best at minimizing our costs. When we were looking at healthcare, we didn't
Yeah.
know the options that were available to us or what healthcare looked like abroad. So we were really getting a healthcare plan initially that was $800 a month.
Mm.
And then we realized we didn't need that once
Yeah.
we realized that a lot of healthcare in terms of routine could be paid out of pocket and be very reasonable. And
Yep.
emergency care could be covered with a plans, which is the route we went with now and is now $112 every 4 weeks for a family of 4. So a major difference. And it's
Huge.
worked well for us. And then with flights, we didn't know what we were doing there either. because we initially went to Mexico and we were flying around the country instead of using public transit, and
Yep.
that was causing us like, costing us $1,000 each time we were flying. So just these things that you don't think about initially that can cost you more upfront.
Mm-hmm.
This is the other options that are out there that are safe, reliable, and good options too.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I very much would agree. Like you said, there was no model presented for you guys as
No.
you identified. So it's like we're kind of this in between, kind of figuring it out here, kind of rogue, if you will, in
Yeah,
this process. So I'm sure, yeah, there's a lot of just kind of learning along the way, which honestly I think is the best learning because that's how you become more enriched in that experience.
true.
So when you talk about your early travel, right, which as you kind of touched on was expensive and rushed, it was touristy, rental cars, rigid into itineraries, and then something shifted to slow travel, which when we met, like that was really a new word for me, like slow travel.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure it's new for a lot of people because you're like slow travel. What the hell is that? Um, but slow travel, right, and public transit, which you talked about, and local living. What was like that internal shift that preceded that external change at how you moved through the world?
I think the biggest thing is we did Mexico and then we Guatemala, and we did a little better in Guatemala, but
Yeah.
then we went home and we switched over going to India. India is like a total beast in itself. It's an amazing, beautiful country. I would absolutely go back, but you
Yes.
don't travel through India just like hustle bustle through it. No, it'll eat you alive.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You gotta figure out the system. You have to know how it works. The train system is completely different. It's not what you think. You have to
Yep.
know where to shop and you have to know how to get around. So that really taught us so much of travel, which is, I think, how we really learned how to slow travel and do more of what the local people were doing and feeling more comfortable in an uncomfortable situation
Yep.
because the people in India were like, I'm just going to eat you alive and
Yeah.
tear you up if you don't start speaking up for yourself.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And two, I have kind of two things. One, my initial thought is like I'm a big risk taker, so I enjoy the hustle and bustle. Not to say you have to do that, but I enjoy the maybe the unknown might be a better word. Was there one maybe I would say fear, but maybe anxiety of like, oh, we have to learn, we have to like figure this out. Like this is we're in this game trying to learn how to learn their custom, their values, and the lifestyle. Was there very much that in play?
Yeah, there was definitely parts of that because it's just like new cultures that you're landing in, and you can't research everything about a country or know everything about a culture. You really have to kind of adapt, learn, and talk to people along the way. And there were definitely
Mhm.
things we didn't realize. Like when we first got into India and we got an Uber, the gas the the gas tank was in the trunk, and I was like, "Where does our luggage go?" And they go, "You sit it on the roof, and there's no way to strap it on the roof." And they're like, "That's just how it is." And I was like, "Okay,
Oh,
okay,
okay.
go."
Yeah. Right, this is new. Yeah, tell Steven to get on top of the car. Um, Speaking of slow travel, just another quick question here before we move on. Like, how long are you in maybe countries or cities? For those who are listening, they hear slow travel, but what is that kind of duration when it comes to staying?
We think the best way to go about it for ourselves is to spend at least 1 month in each country, because that way you can get the most out of a visa if you are paying for one as a US
Yep.
citizen, and trying to like in Ecuador, we stayed 90 days, which wore out the length of our visa there.
Oh,
So
good.
a month at least, because that way your flights aren't on top of each other and you're not paying for visas back to back. That's
Yeah.
how that's how we do it.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, good. I was just curious too, and I'm sure some others were there too. Also, too, like I'm sure staying longer, you might get a little benefits on discounts and stuff like that,
Yeah.
which help
You
to
get to
stay
know,
long.
like, local people,
Yeah.
and they have to be like, "Okay, cool, you're coming back again. I don't have to just keep giving you the raised price."
Yes, you become a familiar face, almost a local, like you
Yeah.
said. Um, all right, so great. So I want to move a little bit forward here, right? You and Steven kept your healthcare license current, which is
Mhm.
obviously that as you said, it renews every 10 years, and there's fees like every 2 years, I believe you said,
Yeah.
offline. Of course, very deliberate in utilizing that, or at least having it in place. What does it mean to keep that door open? And for you or Steven, is that more of a security thing, or like is that something else just to have it on the back burner?
I think the biggest thing is if we were to let it go, like, the every 10-year license, then we'd have to go all the way back through school again, and
Oh yeah.
and I just couldn't imagine letting our license go after the schooling. So,
Yes.
yeah, it's a back burner, and it's also like, would I ever wanna let that go? But 10 years from now, maybe my life will be completely different. I'll be like, "It's okay."
Yeah.
Right now, it's like a worst case scenario if everything were to go away, we could go
Yeah.
back to that.
Yeah. That's important. Yeah. If you said going back to school, I'm like, no, we're way past that. Let's just, bite the bullet, keep it going, keep it renewing. We'll pay the fees because
Yeah,
that'd be too much, especially abroad. So, so I want to move kind of behind as we get past really the architecture, as we talked about, like how you guys are actually doing it. Now I kind of want to talk about the life on the road, right? Like, what does that actually look like while you're in these countries, slow traveling as a family, the challenges, as we talk about the scams, the school, the joy, all
yeah.
of that going forward.
Mhm.
So, if you can give me a moment, Anna, from the road that no travel brochure would ever show you, something that maybe tested you, surprised you, or changed the way you saw the world, right? That maybe, if you can, maybe what is maybe one story that captures what this life actually is like underneath the highlight reel, which everyone thinks, oh, we're going to travel, but here's actually the reality of things that happen behind the scenes that people don't see.
I think one of the biggest things for me is when we do our transitions from country to country or city to city, there's not
Hmm.
always a perfect route to do it or a perfect setup to do it. So we went all the way from like Rajasthan and West India over to Vietnam. There was no perfect way to do it. And of course, we're not ready to pay top dollar to get all the way over there. So
Yep.
we ended up taking a train. Then we sat at the train station for most of the day and let the kids just kind of play, which they actually enjoyed. And then we get to
Hmm.
the airport, and unfortunately, our flight was overnight. And when
Oh,
we took that flight overnight, we arrived at like 3 AM in the airport in Vietnam. There's only 2 officers sitting doing, immigration at that point. My toddler's screaming, and I just felt like, "Wow, this is not fun for anybody."
yeah,
But the
this is
immigration
it.
officer actually walked over, he took us to the front of the line. We had transport set up for us, and we got into the city, and, that's the point where we're like, "What do we do now?" And now it's 9 AM, we can't check in till 3 PM, and we
Yeah.
figured out a way to check into, like, a hostel and let our kids sleep for a while. So it's just figuring all that out, like, it was a 36-hour travel day. I didn't have it all planned out, but we were able to figure it out in the best way possible in that setting. That's
Yeah.
what happens.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's still life, like you said, and you got kids with you. So it's like kids are gonna be kids, right? Things are gonna be stressful. It's not gonna be all roses and sunshine. Like there's gonna be little hiccups. And I think there's gotta be, and I'm sure you guys are aware of it, but I think there's gotta be a level of patience and acceptance, knowing there's gonna be things along the way
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and navigating that as you encounter it, right, in that process.
Yeah, you have to be willing for things to go wrong. Like, do not think that everything's gonna be perfect because it just won't be. It's just life. Like you said, it's life somewhere else.
Yes, and that's gonna just set you up for more failure, right? Frustration,
Yeah,
and that's not what you want at all. So I mentioned scams because for those who are obviously either watching this eventually on YouTube or just listening to it, you mentioned offline there was a scam in Mexico. So you
yeah,
guys navigated some police bribery in
I did.
Mexico, tourist scams, language barriers, and just logistics of raising a child in constantly changing environments. Um, which for most people cite safety as their primary reason for not doing something like this. What do you actually know about safety from lived experience now that you've been doing it for almost 2 years that most people sitting at home consuming news do not? Because I know you probably get this a lot.
Oh, a ton. Every time I mention we're going somewhere, somebody mentions, "Why would you go there?" I would take that off my itinerary.
Yeah.
And
It's like,
I feel like the biggest thing is you just have to realize that every country is gonna have its bad pockets, bad cities, bad
mhm.
people. There's no place that is immune to that, and we understand that, and that's why we also don't just listen to one news station, but I always go and look and see what are the travel advisories for the country.
Yes.
Like, if going to Guatemala, there's a travel advisory for it. They're saying, like, "Reconsider travel," but we know that going to Antigua and Lake Atitlan, that they are safe. But if you
Yep.
were to go to other places, absolutely not. So,
Yes.
it's just taking things with a grain of salt, right? Like, saying also that Ecuador has cartel. Well, yes, they do, but not the entire country. There are plenty of people in that country who are just wanting the same thing that you and I want. They wanna be happy, they wanna raise their kids, they wanna eat, they wanna enjoy their day, which is all that we ran into in the entire country.
Yeah. I know. I think people are so quick. I mean, of course, we live in a social media world, so you understand. But like people are so quick to judge, and like you said, the whole country, just because there's a cartel there, doesn't mean, to your point, the whole country's like that. There's other people just like us in
Yeah.
different countries that want to raise their kids, have a great life, and you know, do the same thing that we want to do. So it's not all doom and gloom. And there comes some discernment when you're looking through all this to find the spots, because let's face it, America is not perfect.
Yeah.
Uh, we got gangs, we got all type of crazy stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm sure people look at us at the same perspective or same lens of
Mhm.
scrutiny. When
Absolutely.
you when you guys are traveling too, Anna, like with your, because obviously your kids are young, can you kind of tell us about homeschooling on the road? Because I think your daughter, she's 6 now, 6-year-old.
Yeah, she's 6, so she's kindergarten this year. She has a late birthday.
Yes. Okay. Well, good for her. Yes. Uh, so she's in kindergarten, right? Doing that type of level work, but also she's learning like currencies, language, local foods, global religions, and geography firsthand, which I love through you show through your Instagram, um, which is awesome. What has travel taught your daughter or kids both about, or excuse me, what has your travel taught your child that really your classroom or a classroom couldn't teach her?
I think it's so amazing how much she absorbs, and she's 6 years old, so there's no
Uh,
filter to the 6-year-old that you and I would have, but she sees
mhm.
people now, and she could identify an Indian, and she's like, "They
Yes.
have a dot on their forehead, mommy, and she's wearing a sari," and I'm, like, embarrassed, and she's, like, showing me, and I'm like, "Good for you for noticing this," and she's noticing different language, and she goes, "That sounds like Spanish."
Yes.
So, she's just picking up I remember just the first time when I was traveling and I saw different currency and I just thought it was monopoly money because I was older, and it's like, of course it's not, it's just someone else's currency, but she just gets this exposure early on. She sees different religions, and it's just so neat to expose her to how different people live, what different religions
Mhm.
look like, and that none of it is wrong, but it's just a different way of living, and she just
Yeah.
gets the exposure.
We talk a lot on this show about living a life that is coherent on the inside and the outside. Anna didn't just dream it, she built it. Whether you want to know the financial strategy that allowed her to leave medicine, or you want the exact practical step to slow travel the world with your kids, Anna has a map for you. I've linked her full program and her 6 free lessons directly in the show notes of this episode. Tap the link below, grab those free lessons, and see what's possible when you give yourself permission to rewrite the script. Yeah, that firsthand experience, which we talked about prior before this show, is like that's such a valuable, I think, priceless, immersive experience that she's going to be able to get, that you can't just read about, right, or get a lecture about. Like she's in it, right?
Yeah,
And thankfully for you, and to you and Steven, you guys are giving her that opportunity to see the vastness of what the world actually is, right? We hear in our elementary geography books, right, our McGraw Hill books of what the world looks like, but she's in it. And I love that, she can identify, different skin tones and like, different languages, different food types, right? All these other things that are you pick up and it'll always be with her as she grows up. So
yeah.
it's good you guys are doing that.
Especially with the filter of just a 6-year-old versus what an adult may see with different
Mhm.
religions, skin tones, diversity, all that. She does it with the filter of a 6-year-old with nothing over top of it. There's
No.
nothing else, there's no lens over it than just hers, which is really cool. It just lets her see it for what it is.
Yeah, very curious. It's just soaking it in. Very
Yeah.
curious about her world scene. Speaking of your kids though too, Anna, you guys have been very intentional about checking in with your kids to make sure that the pace works for them, because this is I have 2 kids. I have a 10-year, well, soon to be 10-year-old, and a soon to be 4-year-old. So it's like even just going to the store, right, is like
Mhm.
chaos for them. They can get
Yeah.
upset. So this is really a big form of like emotional attunement that most parents, do not build their lives at all or around.
Mhm.
What has slowing down enough to actually check in taught you about your kids and about yourself?
We just notice in our kids when they're having a hard time. We notice when we need to slow down. Our kids, again, are very great at showing their emotions, and when something's wrong, they don't always say something is wrong. Maybe they can't put the verbal words to it, but
Yep.
we notice when they're upset and we're like, okay, we did a whole day of what mom and dad wanted to do. Tomorrow just needs to be focused on our kids going to the playground because that's what they need.
Yep.
So it's just easy to read when you know what your kids need versus I'm saying it because they're not adults and just completely changing your itinerary, your pace, and everything to just fit your kids, especially if you're going slow enough that you can do that.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah, because I feel like most travel. we just got back from Florida um, recently, right? And it's trying to build in with, like you said, your adult stuff, and then
Yeah,
also what your kids need. And like I said, we went to a couple parks. That's just what our son needed. He just needed to let
yeah,
loose and be a kid, and we could just watch him and let him have fun. So I think it's important to have that dynamic set up, and I think that's important to what you're doing, which I wanted to highlight that you're able to kind of get on her level, both of you, to say, hey, what's important,
yeah.
and how can we accommodate? So very much, good on your part.
Thank you.
You described really a shift from America instinct of do it now, faster, more, and to patience, more flexibility and presence. And this is kind of really moving toward just kind of slow travel as the internal architecture that you
Mhm.
guys are doing. Um, and kind of going back to that, right? That's not really a travel adjustment. That's really kind of a nervous system rewiring on your part. What
Yeah.
is your internal experience of like time and urgency feel like now compared to the life that you left when you started?
I feel like before I left, I had massive urgency on everything because working in our career, everything needed to be done yesterday. And if it was
Right.
any slower than that, then people were
Yeah.
counting on you. And I feel like that really translated into my family and my kids. I was taking it home with me as much as I tried not to. I feel like it
Mm.
just came home with me.
Yeah, it's
Anything
hard
was
not.
sitting. You just needed, I feel like you needed to get it done.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how, even just going to different places, as I said, I'm sure you're aware, just a different pace of life, how so much slower it is. You're actually living in that moment rather than, like you said, hustle and bustle or the urgency of getting
Yeah.
stuff done yesterday. And you guys are coming from a very demanding, um, field. I mean, like I said, medical is like, we need it now. So
Hmm.
it's hard not to, I don't know, consequently embody that even when you don't want to,
Yeah.
or try to, deliberately not absorb it. Um, so I'm sure that was, an adjustment or
Yeah. You go to certain countries and sometimes you're just like asking for something now and they're like, "Eh, it'll be here tomorrow." And you're like, "Oh,
okay. I guess we'll wait and we'll see here.
okay."
Yeah. So my next question for you, right? You said that this life has taught you and your family to see life as as bigger and more flexible than traditional experiences or expectations. Excuse me. What specifically became possible, and how you think, how you relate to each other, and how you see the world that maybe potentially wasn't possible before.
I feel like now we just have more perspective as to what's possible, like you said, because before it was such a narrow lens of we work till we're 65,
Hmm.
we're going to stay for retirement, and then the kids are going to go to college, and like
Right.
this whole like rewriting our script and slowing down and rewiring our nervous system and being like, are there other avenues? Are there other possibilities? What does the world look like? How is it functioning? And can we adopt any of that for ourselves? Which is what we've consciously done over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. A change, internal change mentally. Uh,
Mhm.
with that that process. So you also, which I love, right? In this next question, you reject the narrative that having kids restricts freedom, right? I love that. In fact, you said your family seems to have found more freedom with your kids than most people find without them. What is that challenge about the stories we tell ourselves about what is possible? Looking at that narrative.
I think the big thing now is that everyone feels like they can't have kids because it takes away from their freedom, and I think, "Well, what happened?" And I don't want
Mhm.
anybody to, like, actually get mad about this, but, like, what happened in your life or in your childhood that made you think that you didn't have those opportunities or that something would be taken away from you? Because I don't think that should be the narrative. I don't see
Yeah.
anyone when we travel
Mhm.
that feels like their life is limited. They pick up their kid and they take it with them wherever they're going, and the children are included. So maybe it's also just our society as a whole not
Yep.
including children in everything that we as adults want to do. And then maybe if we included them, adults would be more like, okay, this is fine. I could have a kid and still exist in what I want to do.
Yeah, and still have your individuality. I think,
Yeah.
I had kids young at 22, and I feel like it's the old adage of like, "Oh, like, have your fun now before your life changes." But honestly, like, you could still have fun. I took my daughter still everywhere. I even took her to meetings with people I met. So for me, it's like, you don't have to buy into that narrative. You don't have to subscribe to say that you can't have fun. And I'm sure you ran across other couples across the country that are doing exactly what you're doing or very similar with their kids. It doesn't have to be a one mind kind of track that you can't do this. Um, I think that needs to change. I agree. I think society has it wrong that we can't have fun with our kids, and we're losing as adults some type of, like I said, self, I don't know, reclaimment or individuality that you can't have with kids. So I
Yeah.
don't think it's true. But I love that you reject that, and that's not in your stratosphere, right? It's
Yeah.
not in your world. So kind of going kind of more back to you, Anna, yourself, right? You've been intentional about your social media presence, which I do want to commend you because your videos are really good.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know I don't know, I joke, I'm like, I don't know who's teaching you, but like your uh your videos are good to, like, when you do your open questions, and like just the layout is like I said, it's simple, it's effective, it's like not too long, right? It's just short enough.
Yeah.
And it's good. I think it gets at like what people are thinking about. I think that's why it's so effective, because you're in the mind of what someone is on the other side.
Perfect.
So anyways, that was just my own little 2 cents I wanted to share, because I was like, man, your videos are really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So, right, you talked about your social media, right? As I was before my comment there, but your social media presence, right? Real life over kind of influencer culture that we've kind of got into recently over the past couple of years. But
Yeah.
you want to be authentic, right? Over sponsored, right?
Yeah.
In a world that monetize performance, right, on social media, what does authenticity matter? Or I guess, why does authenticity matter to you? And what does it cost you to hold that line of conviction of not crossing over?
My biggest thing is when I go on social media and I see people who are sponsored or they're living the influencer life or it makes everything look perfect. I just
Mhm.
wonder if what people are digesting from it. Because for me, it just made me think, "What am I doing wrong? How do I get
Yeah.
this perfect life?" And granted,
Mhm.
I don't wanna show my kids show having meltdowns, but I just wanna show that you can have a real life abroad. You can take public transit, you can stay in local areas, you can go live life somewhere else on your own. Because I really don't wanna be bought out by any brand and just have
I
a big
agree.
sponsorship label all over my page where somebody just feels like they're being sold to. I
Yeah,
just want
yeah.
them to, connect with me and what we're doing and make it possible.
Yeah, and that very much comes across, now that you say that, that very much comes across. I think anyone who goes to your page will see that or feel that, the authenticity. You're not just, walking around with all these labels all over your shirt as you go through your videos that you're being sponsored. It's actually you, your family, real life, right?
Yeah,
Marriage, kids, travel, the ups, the downs. That I think which makes it unique, and I think, in my own opinion, authenticity should be, I wouldn't say like come back as like as a trend, but I think people want that, or maybe appreciate that might be a better word.
yeah,
Speaking for myself, to actually see that behind all this fake highlight reel, as you mentioned.
exactly.
Um, so I want to kind of move forward right to this next segment, which is really kind of what's next, right, for you guys. You mentioned you want to travel to the Silk Road and really beyond. Before I get there though, because I want to have the listeners, I guess, maybe get your answer. How many countries have you guys been to at this point?
With kids or just,
You can do both.
um, between me and my husband and the kids and all that, I think it's been about 30 countries. So it's
Okay.
not that many as you think, but I think
No,
it's
that's
probably doing, like, a lot of cities in between. So yeah, that's kinda where we're at this point.
no, that's, I mean, 30 is great. I mean, I don't want you to downplay that, because I feel like one or two countries is great. Anytime you can get out the US is like, that's an awesome experience. Um, I'm kind of just asking you kind of random questions because I'm curious, right? Once again, is there any favorite city that you guys have went to? Or maybe you experience, yeah.
Favorite city? Let me think. I
I
really
know.
enjoyed it when we went down to Jaipur in India, West India and Rajasthan. We celebrated Holi there. We stayed with
Oh,
a host family there that really connected with my girls, and we stayed in their house. It was like a separate living space inside of it. They were
yep.
so nice. They showed us around, they took us around, and I don't think I would have gotten the same experience if I went there and hadn't had someone show me around. It's just a different experience when someone is doing it out of the kindness of their heart versus doing it for a monetary exchange too.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And they're from there, like you said, of course,
Yeah.
but like with the genuine affection coming from that is different than, being paid, like you said. So anyways, I was just curious. I was just being more just, hey,
Yeah.
where you been? What's your favorite city? Because I'm sure someone's also curious listening. So kind of going back to the Silk Road, as I was getting to, and what you're kind of planning for ahead and kind of building toward personally and professionally. You're planning to go to Central Asia. I can't even say, is it Kazakhstan? I can never say that country.
Kazakhstan?
Yeah, I can't, I
That's
can't say.
okay.
I just know where it's at on the map, but
Yeah, yeah.
the Silk Road, right? The Silk Road countries. Um, Honestly, it's really not a typical family destination. It is like a very rocky out there, very sandy. Um,
It's a lot of mountains, yeah.
yeah, very, very mountainous.
Mhm.
What is drawing you guys there specifically, and what do you expect it to maybe ask of your family or yourself?
I think one of the biggest things is that we try to look for destinations that are not labeled family friendly, and I do that because everyone who comes on my social media or emails me or DMs me always mentions, "Go to Europe. Why not Europe?" And it's Europe or the
Yeah,
Caribbean, and I want to kinda take that label and, like, take it and put it somewhere else and be like, "Look, it can be somewhere else. You can still have a good family travels. It's less expensive. It feels more
yeah,
culturally intact because there's less tourists there, and it can be still just as amazing. Because I mean, Europe, I mean, it must show up daily where somebody says that.
I know.
Western Europe at that.
But I think that's once again, that's just getting sold of like, getting fed where to go, what to do.
Yeah.
And even just in my short stint traveling abroad, like getting immersed in the culture, right? In like little almost small cities or tribes, um, is great. And it's like there to your point, it can be much cheaper and there's so much to see. Like
Yeah.
the world's massive. There's so many different areas you can go. Like you don't have to redline yourself to not experience fun things or see great things. So totally agree there on, like I said, just getting past Europe and the Caribbean. It's there's more, and then there's more to do. We're cheaper.
Yeah.
Um, exploring your brand partnerships. That I know you kind of got over the past couple of years. Um, but you've wanted brand partnerships and sponsors to be really kind of aligned with your values, while being deliberate about avoiding commercialization. What is like the long term vision for your work, that you're building around this life or that you're building now, and where does, I guess, Anna the creator fit inside the Anna the traveler and the mother as well?
I think the biggest thing for us when we're building something is that we want it to first stem from family, like
Yep.
re-scripting what our life looks like and giving other people permission to do that, and then showing them how to do it, but also making it fit their family. Because our biggest thing is like, you don't have to copy us. If you
Correct.
don't like anywhere that I went, that's great. If you want to stick to Europe, totally fine. Our biggest
Yeah.
thing is just let me show you how to re-script, rewrite your life and what that looks like for us and how you can then position that on your life. And
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
that's, like, where brands would fit in, and we always typically go for things that fit either where we're going, we're interested in, or actually already use, and then just creating, like, our own products too that we've made, that we've learned, and that we feel like would benefit others.
Yeah. On throughout their daily life, I would assume too, what you do on a daily use.
Yeah.
Um, so great answer. If you're looking back, like speaking of travel, if you're looking back on this chapter of their lives, really on your kids' life, excuse me, if you kind of broadcast out that they're 30 years older, what do you hope that they carry from this experience? And maybe what do you hope it does for them, or who they become when they're older?
I really hope that when they're older, they just feel like they're comfortable as who they are. They're
Yes.
comfortable with skin. They're comfortable traveling around the world and not being influenced by what people are saying anymore. Like I said, really trying to like remove that script of somebody laying a script on top of you. This is what it looks like. This is what you need to do. And then being like, no, actually, I can write it however I want and
Yep.
be successful in my own right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. Especially, I feel like kids nowadays, there's so much influence, so it's easy to kind of pull them in so many different directions,
Hmm.
whether that's social media, parents, friends, colleagues, right, teachers. And then when you become an adult, you're like, who am I? Which
Yeah.
direction do I want to go? I'm just going to go what feels more comfortable. but there's no like self authorship. There's no self stability of like, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, and I'm okay with that. I don't have to, like I said, buy into something else that I don't align with. So very much, I think that's great, and I hope that that is the case. I think that your kids will, or will definitely set themselves up for that opportunity to live a life like that as adults because of all the things they're seeing now. Um, it's just going to help them going forward into the future. So as we kind of wrap up, we've been moving kind of fast, which it doesn't seem like it. I feel like we've been doing good, but I'm like, we're kind of moving kind of fast. We have some bonus questions at the end though for you, so
All right.
uh, we'll unpack it there. But as we kind of do hit the close here, um, right? You've paid off 160,000, right? To kind of recap in debt. You sold your home.
Mhm.
You left your established healthcare careers and took your family into the world, not as tourists, but really kind of people living life differently, as we kind of coined slow traveling. When you kind of look at that full decision, right, and everything that's unfolded from it, the question I think for you, Anna, is like, what do you know now about what human beings actually need to feel free that you could not have known before you made that leap, actually leaving?
Oh, gosh, I think the biggest thing is that we get to control the time and the clock on our table.
Mm,
I love that I get to clock in and clock out whenever I need to, that it
yeah,
doesn't take time away from myself anymore, from my husband or from my kids, and that I get to live more intentionally in a way that makes me feel happy about what I'm doing.
that's it. That's awesome. I feel like listening. It's like that's what everyone wants or would want to want. Like even myself was like, yeah, you want to be intentional and be on your own clock.
Yeah, the
I
clock
love
is
how,
huge, right?
I
Just
love how you put that.
clock in, clock out, and it's not trading my time for money anymore for someone else.
Hmm. Yeah, man, that's it. That was awesome. Great answer. Yeah,
Thanks.
that it is. That's inspiring because someone who's listening, someone who's myself, on this podcast with you, that's myself, that's something that I want for my family, my kids, right? And I think whether it's a different version, whoever's listening, or different people that interact with you, I think there is that maybe common theme that people desire for that. Of course, connection and family, but it's to be on your own time, to have be intentional and have not have time taken away from your either spouse or significant other, but your kids, and to build those memories as well.
Yeah,
Um, that's an important thing. Like be present in that moment. So I loved your answer there.
thank you.
For the person listening, right?
Mhm,
Those who are in travel or just curious in general, for those who are listening right now who may have that pull, because I know you're getting a lot of DMs, a lot of emails for people who have that pull to want to do this, who feel that quiet internal signal that there's a different life available for them, but have not given themselves that permission to pursue it.
mhm.
What do you say to that person?
The people that I usually hear from, there's always something holding them back, whether it be uncertainty, fear, or logistics. A lot of it has to do with money. People say, "I
Yeah.
don't have enough money. I don't know how much I need." I feel like no matter what, you never feel 100% ready to change the trajectory of what you're currently doing, especially if you're an adult with kids established in your life.
Yep.
The thought of changing that trajectory is extremely scary. So just know that you'll never be 100% ready. I know I wasn't, but give yourself that time to make a change to do it, because the worst that could happen is that you have to go back to what you're currently doing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely true. You can always go back, right? That's to say, you can always go back. And it's funny because you just recently mentioned on one of your videos, like you were the one who almost didn't make this happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was me.
You were the one who was scared to make the jump.
Yeah. It's hard.
So
I was like, I'm a physician assistant, I'm a woman in this career with
yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
Why in the world would I walk away from this? And then I was like, it was a big change.
Yeah. Yep. Identity change for sure. Couple more questions for you here, Anna. Um, for people who are listening, where can they find you, right? Social media wise, follow
Mm.
your journey and stay connected with your family's world.
Yeah. So our biggest page right now that we stay with consistently is on our Instagram. It's wanderlust.hawks. And then I also have a blog where we post like more of our long form so people can kind of see what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
and give more details about it on our blog, which is wanderlusshawks.com. So that'll let you into more of my thought process behind everything instead of just my 7 seconds or one
yeah,
minute blurb on social media, which can kind of get you going, but maybe you want something more, that's where you would go.
perfect, awesome. I'll make sure, of course, to put that in the show notes so those who are wanting to connect with you can definitely do so and stay connected with you. Speaking of right, your long form and what you guys are doing now. This is really kind of my bonus question for you.
Yeah.
But want to give you the opportunity, if you're willing to share about your programs or really kind of what resources you guys have in place of how you're helping other families not necessarily identically do what you do, but help them set up to get there. So I'll give you the time if you want to share about those resources that you and Stephen are kind of have in place.
Yeah. So the biggest thing we made is that when I was going to mom posts like on Facebook, everybody was asking, I have this week off for spring break. My kids
Hmm.
are X, Y, and Z. These are their ages. Where should I go? And that mom would get like 100 comments. And I'm like, how in the world is she going to sort through this? And
Correct.
what if any of that doesn't fit what she wants, anyways? So, what we set up was a destination match tool. So, what this essentially is just like everything that we've learned over the past year, injected it into a tool that then we've given to people. They fill out a form and it gives them matches of places where they can go. Where again, this doesn't involve anybody telling you, but it gives you the
Mhm.
opportunity to find a place where you could go based on what your family is looking for. And that is completely free. So that is on our blog that we have available. And then I also set up our travel advisory, which is more people have like in-depth questions about everything that goes into traveling long term, from starting, selling your stuff, logistics, finding
Mhm.
a destination, flights, everything, accommodations, where we walk through it with everybody and give them the opportunity to ask us questions. We teach them our systems in real time, apply it to their situation, and that's just a way for families to really go ahead and travel long term while learning our systems too.
Okay, awesome. So you guys got a handful of stuff prepackaged, ready to go for
Yeah.
people that wanna touch base with you. So thanks for sharing that because I know there's probably someone listening or will listen over this time that will say, "Hey, I wanna get in touch um, and learn what you're doing and how can I do it." Are you doing any other like maybe consultative work beyond those two?
That's the biggest thing right now, the consulting worth, the travel advisory. That's like the one-on-one that we do with
Okay,
people for a month. We're working on building something more digital where if somebody's not ready to do like a one-on-one, they could just learn our systems and they'll be in like a digital course. So that's what we're
yeah.
working on. So that way people have access to that too.
Okay. We'll have to stay tuned then to
Yeah.
yeah that course. So when it drops. Um, Other than that, Anna, my last question, right? My famous question on the podcast, for those who have listened, stayed with us, is it's called Life Is, right? And if I, asked you, right, life is blank, right? You fill in that last little blurb. What would you either put in there, whether it's a word or maybe a phrase that you would fill in and complete that sentence?
I would say life is what you make it. You have
Yep.
one life. So please do what makes you happy and fulfills you.
Yes. So true, but I think people miss that. And I love that you reiterate that because life is short. And I know we say that cliche in a cliche way, but um, what I always say, once the lights go off, they're off. So it's
Yeah.
you gotta live it now, make it the best, as you said, and do what makes you happy. So I love the answer. I appreciate the answer. Um, from here, we'll kind of let you get back to it. I definitely appreciate the time. I definitely appreciate connecting with you and grateful that you wanted to come on the show to speak to myself, but also those who are listening and provide value of how they can live a more coherent life through travel and how to get to that part of their life they're trying to accomplish. So we wish you all the well. I appreciate it. If there's any lasting words you want to share, I'll give you the floor. But thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was very wonderful connecting with you and just giving me the opportunity to share our story with other families who are just thinking about doing something different and maybe needing permission for it. I appreciate just the opportunity to share that with other people and connecting with people like yourself too, who are just interested in that lifestyle as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's needed. Like I said, what you're doing is needed, which is why I wanted you to go on here. And I think other people, um, they're missing that gap, that missing link that you're doing. And if you can kind of give them the direction, that's what's going to help them catapult to live a similar life. So all is well, and I appreciate it. And hope you enjoy the rest. Wherever your travels are next, we'll be watching from either a phone.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, hey, Anna, you take care, and we'll see you.
Okay. Thank you.
What Anna showed us today is that freedom is not found, it is built. And the building starts with one decision, the decision to stop living inside someone else's story about what your life is supposed to look like. She and her family did not stumble into this. They paid off debt deliberately, they planned carefully, they agreed what they have left behind honestly, and they moved, with their kids, with their values, with their eyes open. That is not recklessness, that is coherence. And what they found on the other side of that decision is exactly what this show has always been about. A life that expands when you finally align the outside of it with the truth of the inside. Until then, see you in the next episode. That's a wrap on today's episode of the Life Is podcast. If something in this conversation landed for you, a shift in perspective, a reminder, or something you needed to hear, don't let it stay there. Take it with you, put it to work. If you're ready to go deeper, I have tools built specifically for this journey, a self-discovery blueprint and a diagnostic designed to show you exactly where your foundation needs attention. Links are in the show notes. And if this episode added value, share it with someone who's building, leave a review, help us grow this community of intentional people doing real work. Remember, fulfillment isn't found, it's built. Life is art in motion, and you are the artist. Until next time, keep building.